Good morning, everyone. We'll give our everyone a few minutes to join us and get started shortly. Looks like we still have a couple of people attendees joining us, so we'll give it just a moment more. Good morning, everyone. It looks like we've got a good number of you all attending virtually, and belated happy Thanksgiving. I hope you were able to enjoy lots of turkey, and if you're like me, you're probably feeling a bit comatose from days of turkey leftovers. And thank you for joining us on Cyber Monday. It's kind of nice to do something besides shop online in this busy time, and we're very grateful for each of you taking time out of what I know is very busy schedules the Monday after a holiday to join us to talk about these important matters that we're here to talk about today. Before we begin, though, just a couple of housekeeping items. The attendees are all in mute mode. There is a question and a chat feature available through the control panels, so make sure you avail yourself of that. We've got staff who are designated to watch those, and we'll be able to respond. A special thanks to the League of Municipalities, the Association of Counties, and so many good partners who are out there who have helped us get the word out to you all, important stakeholders of Kansas housing. A special thanks to the KHRC staff who put this together on a fairly expedited schedule, knowing how important it is to get the word out there and coming back from a holiday as well. As far as just what to expect today, we've got this scheduled for an hour. We are going to give a quick overview of KHRC, who we are, what we do. We're going to talk about COVID resources out there from our eviction prevention program for our community services block grant. And then most of our time will be reserved for our emergency solutions grant program. This vital resource is so key to your communities and to serving and fighting those facing homelessness. We want to mainly talk about how we can partner with you as key stakeholders of KHRC, because at times like this, it's so important to talk about how home has never been more important. You know, home has always been a physical shelter. It's always been a place of safety. It's always been a place where we have a roof over our head, walls around us. But right now, during this critical time in our nation, in our state, and in your communities, home is so much more. Home is where we work. Home is where we learn. Home is where we shop. Home is where we heal. Home is where we meet, whether it's 4-H meetings or Boy Scouts or our church services. And if you take away that stability and you take away that hub that home is, then you are losing that all. And it's just absolutely vital that we help keep people in their homes, keep them connected to your communities and to your neighborhoods within your communities. So thank you for your time. Thank you for this chance to talk a little bit about what home means. And we're going to kind of turn to the presentation at hand here. So if we could go ahead and advance the slide here. I'm just starting with who we are, and KHRC itself is a self-supporting nonprofit public corporation. Years ago, we were the Department of Commerce and Housing, but we've been freestanding as this public corporation for a number of years. We administer housing and community programs across the state and in your communities. What we do, our mission is simple. We help Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve. And certainly our ESG program that we're going to be talking about, as well as everything else, is exactly what our mission is about. Who we work with, well, we work with you. You'll notice the local government officials is one of the first people listed. Mortgage lenders, business leaders, developers, property managers, homeless advocates, nonprofits. If you're a taxpayer, if you live in the state of Kansas, if you work in the state of Kansas, you're a stakeholder of KHRC and are part of our mission. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about how home has never been more important, and it hasn't. It's a challenging time in our state when we risk and are fighting mortgage delinquencies and eviction rising in our state. And that's why we as a corporation, we as the state in partnership with the Kansas Recovery Office have decided to administer a Kansas eviction prevention program. While not the point of this webinar, I do want to take just a moment to make sure that your community is aware of this important resource and the tight time frame that we have to spend it. Currently, there are 73,000 Kansans, or 12% of our total rental households, that have been delinquent on the rent payments in September. That number is overwhelming. That number is astounding. That number is downright scary for KHRC and for those we serve, including you as the communities on the front lines. Meanwhile, we have tenants who are building the amount of rental shortfall month after month after month. By January, that number is projected to be between $94 and $102 million. Meanwhile, COVID has not been easy on our landlords. They've experienced a 12% decline in revenue and an almost 15% increase in costs. So you've got rental evictions going up, and you've got costs and revenue going the wrong way for landlords, and it's hitting a collision course. And that's where KHRC, in partnership with Recovery Office and in partnership with all of you, are administering this temporary Kansas eviction prevention program. How it works. As again, I mentioned the deadline is December 15th. We are able to provide up to $5,000 in rental assistance to tenants who are behind in their rent, clear back to April of this year and up to December of this year. So far, we've received over 5,000 applications requesting $13 million. We've got $20 million to spend, and that money is going fast. So the earlier that you can get the word out to your constituents, to your stakeholders, to your community members, whether it's landlords or tenants, please, your assistance is so vital. It's a simple tool that's on our website. It's a dual online application process, so I'd encourage you to make sure you check that out. Next slide, please. Yes, we're waiting for the, so it looks like we're actually ready now to turn it over to our Community Services Block Grant. I'm honored and thrilled to have our entire team here. And Christine Reimler is our Director of Community Solutions Division. Christine's a veteran of KHRC and does wonderful work for us along with her team who's on this call, and she'll be introducing them shortly. So Christine, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to touch briefly on another funding source that we received extra funding because of COVID, and that's our Community Services Block Grant. We received these funds from the Health and Human Services Department, the federal government, and we received an additional $8 million for our 8 designated agencies around the state. We also have received, within those funds, we're also eligible to put 5% towards discretionary funding, and we received applications and put out about $400,000 for 5 discretionary grants that were all COVID response related. So we have a large amount of money that is coming into the state to help with our COVID response. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to James Chisholm. He and Maria Boyd. Maria, we hired just recently as a COVID response specialist. They work as a great team trying to help get these ESG funds out. And I will turn it over to James. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everybody. I'm James Chisholm. I'm the Emergency Solutions Grant Program Manager. And today we're going to talk about the Emergency Solutions Grant and specifically the Emergency Solutions Grant CV funding, which is the CARES Act funding. Okay, we provide ESG through a network of service providers that offer assistance to those who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless, excuse me. Next slide, thank you. The ESG CV funds availability are $14.8 million in supplemental ESG funding to support COVID relief. That looks like $5.683 million was provided in ESG CV round 1. And we have another round of funding that's going to be $9.1 million. And we currently have our application out for that now. And these applications will be accepted from any unit of local government, including cities and counties. Local governments may apply on behalf of nonprofit organizations, which can provide services as a subrecipient or sub-grantee. We also will accept applications from nonprofit organizations that are willing to provide coverage to categories of homelessness that are not being served or multiple counties or areas that need coverage. One of the things we wanted to do today was to emphasize that we are looking to partner with areas of Kansas that don't have adequate coverage of ESG homelessness funds. And we wanted to be able to meet today to go over some of the new flexibilities provided by the CV funds and to give you examples of how a community can apply for these funds to serve individuals that might be homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless. The funds must serve community members currently experiencing or at risk of homelessness and must be used to prevent, prepare for, or mitigate the effects of coronavirus. And what that could look like is now, due to the coronavirus, the pandemic, there are individuals that might not be able to work, that might be needing to isolate, and therefore their hours are being cut. There are examples of individuals that cannot be exposed to the population as readily as they were before. There's all kinds of ways that individuals are affected by the coronavirus, and these funds are used to help mitigate some of those instances. Next slide, please. So the ESG funds are available to provide assistance in 5 different categories. The categories are emergency shelter, homeless prevention, street outreach, rapid rehousing, and homeless management information system. For the emergency shelter portion of the program, those funds can be used to cover renovation of existing buildings or buildings that were purchased to be a shelter. ESG funds can help renovate those buildings, including rehabilitation or conversion. The buildings must serve as an emergency shelter for certain periods of time. They must serve homeless persons for at least 3 or 10 years, depending on the type of renovation and the value of the building. The type of renovation, and it includes how much is used for renovation versus the value of the building. What that category means is that if you use a certain amount of funds to renovate a building, the percentage of those funds used versus the cost of the building or the value of the building depends on if you have to use that building for at least 3 years or 10 years. It must be used as a shelter, or those funds must be paid back. We cannot purchase property with these CV funds. That's not going to be an eligible cost. The funds can be used for essential services. This includes case management, child care, and most of the services that are needed to operate a shelter you can use ESG CV funds for. Operations includes maintenance, rent, repair, security, a lot of things that are eligible. Some of the new flexibilities for ESG CV include temporary shelters. You can also use the ESG CV funds for hotel and motel funds for places that don't have a shelter available, or if you have overcapacity of a shelter or a shelter that you cannot provide individual spaces for individuals, you can use hotel and motel vouchers to offer non-congregate spaces for emergency shelter. That's a very good need right now because a lot of places do not have emergency shelters. The homeless prevention category of ESG can be used to provide rental assistance for individuals that are at imminent risk of becoming homeless. Right now, there's a eviction moratorium, meaning that places are not supposed to be evicting individuals at this time, but we're seeing individuals are being evicted. So by January 1, that moratorium is supposed to lift. So we're probably going to see the climax effect of individuals that haven't been able to pay their rent for a lot of these months where their income has been reduced. We're probably going to start to see a lot of evictions take place. ESG CV funds can be used as an eviction prevention program for homelessness prevention, but the individuals must have letters certifying from the leaseholder that they will evict them if their rent is not paid. And what that has to look like is individuals have to have an income at 50% of the area median income before to be income eligible. The rental assistance also includes utility assistance. You can pay security and utility deposits, utility payments, last month's rent, and moving costs. Some of the services under homelessness prevention provide for individuals to be housing navigators, where a community can hire somebody to actively go in the community to meet with landlords to discuss what the program is about. We're seeing a big need for that all over the state to kind of provide information to landlords to tell them what these programs are about, so they'll be more willing to accept some of the assistance for homelessness prevention. Right now, landlords are not receiving a lot of their payment, but they're also leery of accepting payment that might not be for the 12 months of a lease. It might just be for a couple of months. Homelessness prevention can pay up to 6 to 12 months of rental assistance as needed for individuals that are being evicted. Along with the homelessness prevention program, there's rapid rehousing. This is a program is for individuals that are homeless and have nowhere to stay. You could use that for rental assistance, utility assistance, deposit assistance, and those type of things. Some of the new flexibilities for these programs include landlord incentives, where you could offer landlords incentives for being willing to provide housing for individuals. You can provide up to 3 months of equal to 3 months rent as an incentive for landlords to rent to individuals that are homeless or about to lose their housing. The next category is street outreach. Street outreach is actually funding to provide for teams that go out to the communities, go out in the communities, and to meet with individuals that are homeless, living on the streets, to provide them with assistance to get them into programs that might be available in the community. Some of the things that you can do under street outreach are engagement costs. That could look like providing, right now the biggest need is to provide PPEs, hand sanitizer. You can also provide clothing, socks, food, those type of things as an engagement to meet with individuals. You can provide case management, emergency health and mental health services for populations of individuals that are living on the street. One of the things we'd like to see is to use these street outreach teams to partner with programs to provide assistance for rapid rehousing, and possibly using some of the assistance to partner with to help individuals get into temporary hotel motel stays to house them while we're looking for places for them to be rapidly rehoused. The homeless management information system is where we collect the information and the data to be able to provide to all of our program providers via the system. So in that system, we have a coordinated entry assessment system where we're doing assessments so we can identify what the needs are of individuals that are living on the streets, and we can send that out to every program that's ESG, that has ESG services in the state, to provide assistance if individuals are willing to relocate. One of the problems with that is that we don't have enough programs in areas that have the need. So that's why we're reaching out today to see if we can either partner with some of these counties that don't have the resources, or to partner with some of the nonprofits to provide some of these services in areas that are not covered right now. Next slide, please. How to apply. Our applications are online right now. It's a comprehensive application that provides a lot of information about the different categories, about some of the flexibilities for ESG. The applications are due on Tuesday, December the 15th. The program is going to run from January the 1st through December the 30th, 2021. We're going to be able to extend the program based on availability of funding. I believe we have access to the funding until I think it's September 2022. So based on the availability of funding, we will be able to extend programs after that deadline if we have available funding. Hopefully we won't have any additional funding. We'll be able to provide that funding out, and we'll be able to use that funding by that time, but we will be able to extend that program. One of the things I want to talk about now are some of the additional activities. Some of the activities under street outreach, you can provide hand washing stations or portable bathrooms for those populations that have a large homelessness, street homelessness. So those hand washing stations and bathrooms can be provided in outdoor locations for people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. There are eligible activities for volunteer incentives. A lot of individuals have been donating their times and working right through the pandemic, putting their own health at risk. And one of the things that have been provided in the ESGB funds are the ability to provide volunteers with incentive pays. The funds can be used to provide reasonable incentives to volunteers who have been or are currently helping to provide necessary street outreach, emergency shelter, essential services, and housing relocation and stabilization services during the coronavirus outbreak. Some of these funds can be used for training also, to train individuals on infectious disease prevention and mitigation for staff working directly to prevent and prepare for and respond to coronavirus. We can also provide funding for temporary emergency shelters. These funds can be used for the following costs related to temporary emergency shelters, renovation, shelter operations and services. Additional requirements for temporary shelters are established in a part of the notice that was put out. There is an ESG-CV notice that went out that kind of covers all these new flexibilities. The landlord incentives are one of the things that I believe, if used right, will be able to incentivize landlords to provide these services even when they're looking at eviction. So those funds can be used to pay the incentives for up to 3 times the rent charge for the unit, including signing bonuses, security deposits, repairing damages incurred by the program participants not covered by the security deposit, or that are incurred while the program participant is still residing in the unit, and the cost of extra cleaning or maintenance. Those incentives cannot be more than 3 times the value of the rent. So it's saying that you can use them as a sign-on bonus or other things to provide those incentives. Another good thing is the hotel motel costs that I talked about. They can be used to pay the following costs for individuals experiencing homelessness, receiving rapid rehousing, receiving homelessness prevention, or residing in permanent supportive housing. And they can be hotel, motel rooms directly through a voucher. You can also pay for the cleaning of the hotel, motel rooms used by program participants. You can use these costs to repair the damages by program participants above the normal wear of the room. So one of the things that we can use hotel, motel vouchers for are overages in emergency shelters. If you need to, say, I know a lot of the shelters nowadays have to have a space where they have to quarantine to be able to provide individual space for individuals that need to be isolated. You can use isolation, hotel, motel rooms for isolation units, and you can also pay to have those rooms cleaned to be reused by somebody else if you need to. One of the other things about ESG-CV funds, it is recommended that there be expanded staffing and training. These funds should be used to beef up your staffing to provide these services. One of the things HUD has emphasized is that we have to increase the infrastructure to be able to provide these funds at this time of the pandemic. So that's what we're looking to do. Another thing is, I know when we talk about ESG and we talk about these different programs, it seems like it's a large task to provide rental assistance, utility assistance, and those type of things. But what we're saying is that you can take one of the categories of ESG and provide only the part of these funds that are the greatest need in your community. So you could look at just doing utility programs or utility payment programs for individuals that are experiencing homelessness or that are on the verge of eviction. You can just do rental assistance for individuals that are being evicted. You do not have to provide the full range of the program, but you can tailor these activities to provide the services that are needed the most in the areas that you cover. Do we have any questions so far?
James, this is Emily chiming in the background, and it looks like there is a hand raised by Mary Davies, if she's with us. Mary, I think you should be able to unmute. Or you could drop your question in the chat box.
Is there a way that I can unmute her?
I'm attempting to do that, but it looks like she's self-muted right now, so she would need to take off that mute on her end.
Do we have a next slide? Or is that the last slide that
Yep.
we have?
Let me switch back.
I know when I looked in the attendees that we had some existing ESG service providers. I know that there was a lot of questions about should they apply for ESG CV funding if they've already had ESG CV funding. And I think that yes, you can apply because since the first round of ESG CV funding came out, these flexibilities were added right at, I believe in September, and our grant was supposed to start in July. So there are a lot of different activities or flexibilities that you can use to augment your program. One of the things that I'm looking for is to get some coverage in the counties that are not covered.
James, this is Emily, and I have a question here from Julia.
Okay.
When applying for the funding, can a nonprofit apply directly, or do you need a city or county entity to apply for them?
In the application, we have when it talks about nonprofits applying directly, we would definitely grant funds to nonprofits that are covering a category of homelessness that's not being served. So if you have a specific category of homelessness, specific as like domestic violence or youth or elderly or SPMI, we would fund directly if that category is not being covered, or if you're going to cover multiple counties that are not being covered. I think it's spelled out in the application.
Thank you, James. Here's another question from Jean Ballou. Do I understand correctly, we can use RRH funds to put someone in a hotel while waiting for a home? Is that correct?
No, rapid rehousing funds are not used for hotel motel. A hotel motel stays can only be used under the emergency shelter category.
Okay, thank you. Here's a great question from Casey Johnson. I know we're starting to receive questions about this through our KEP program as well. Could the funding be used for legal services to prevent evictions?
Under the rapid rehousing and homeless prevention funds, there is the ability to provide for legal services, but those funds are paid directly to agencies or organizations that are licensed to provide legal assistance. So what that could look like is, I think it spells out that the funds have to be used to directly help individuals obtain housing. And those funds have to be used by individuals that are licensed to provide legal assistance.
Okay, thank you for that, James. Here's another good question from Julia. Do you have a list of counties that you are looking at covering or see a need that is not currently being addressed?
Yes, I can provide that. If you email me directly, I can provide you a list of counties that are not covered. Well, what we have agencies that have wide coverage, but single agencies can provide coverage, but not comprehensively. So we're looking to shore up some of the counties that have no coverage. I know we do have some counties that are not covered at all, and I can provide you a list of those.
And scrolling back, we had a previous question earlier in the presentation. James, are you or Maria able to chime in on which continuum of care covers Reno County and who the contact person would be? Where would
Reno
someone go with that
County,
information?
that would be covered by the balance of state continuum of care. And who the person to contact? You would be able to contact Dawn Myers at the Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition. And if you wanted to email me directly, I could provide you with that contact information. I believe that's covered by one of the regional coordinators also. I could provide you with that. I think that would be covered under, I'm not sure of the region, but I think it's covered out of maybe Salina.
It looks like we're caught up on questions that have come in for now. James, would it be helpful if we pulled up the application and just kind of walked folks through it?
If you pull up the application, I can actually show in the application how to provide a grant to an individual agency. That's a great idea, Emily.
Tell me if you can see that.
I can see it.
Okay, all yours.
Do I have control of it?
I will scroll through on your direction.
Yeah, scroll down, please. Okay, scroll back up to the. Okay, stop. I think we want to go further down into the application on maybe page 3, 4 of the application. Keep going. Keep going. Right here. Okay. So at the bottom, the last paragraph, it says Kansas Housing will contract directly with nonprofits that apply for a regional-based project and demonstrates capacity to administer the grant. Right before that, it says Kansas Housing will continue to permit applicants to design diverse projects to meet their local needs. However, we require each applicant to demonstrate coordination of their efforts with the local continuum of care priorities and demonstrate capacity to meet all ESG-CV program requirements. Applicants who design regional projects will be highly considered for funding if the project addresses a statewide need that is supported by data and is administered by an organization with the capacity to fulfill all programmatic requirements. So what we want is individuals that are able to provide a regional approach to this and to demonstrate what needs they're going to be meeting and how they're going to do that. So we will entertain any applications that can provide that information. Can you scroll down some more, Emily? Okay, I think this is just repeating some of the things we already talked about right here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, this goes over the categories. It provides a lot of information about what ESG can do. So I know you can stop, Emily. One of the things that we put out before was that we wanted to partner with counties that were looking to provide emergency shelters, but we're worried about how to staff those shelters during coronavirus. We will be able to provide assistance for operations of any shelters that need operations provided for the next 12 months. This was new shelters in areas that don't currently have shelters. We thought that would be a good fit to partner with counties to do that. I know some of those funds are pretty much running out by the end of December. So that might not be a possibility now. The application is due at the 15th of December, Joanne. Does anybody have any questions about the application itself?
James, I'm just continuing to scroll through the application here, so folks who haven't had a chance to familiarize themselves with it yet can take a quick look and chime in if they have any questions, either by raising your hand, clicking that button, or dropping your question in the question box. But it looks like we're all caught up as far as questions folks have submitted so far.
Okay, I think somebody wants my contact information. I think the last slide of our, there you go. And if you had any questions about program development, you can contact me directly. That's all I've been doing for the last month and a half, is helping individuals understand how programs can be put together. In different areas. One of the things I want to emphasize is you could tailor an ESG program to provide the services that you're either you have the capacity to provide. So if you do rapid rehousing and you don't think you can provide all of the aspects of rapid rehousing, you can provide just rental assistance, you could provide utility assistance, you could provide whatever the needs are greatest in your community. We'd like to see a comprehensive program, but if you could just tailor your program to fit your needs, that would be great. A lot of times, what I'm seeing the biggest now is that housing navigator. I say housing navigator, and that's probably not mentioned anywhere in there, but it comes under housing relocation and stabilization services. And that position is just for an individual to meet with the local landlords or housing authorities or things like that to actually talk about the program and how the program is administered, so they would be more amenable to providing rental property to individuals that are homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless. I think partner with some of the landlord incentives, that would be a good activity to start to focus on now, because I believe in January we're going to see an overwhelming amount of need for homeless prevention. We're seeing it now. I think it's going to be multiplied within 30 days.
James, there's another great question here from Jean. What if we don't use up all of the ESG CV grant money? Does it affect further funding for our agency?
No. And I understand that question. What I look at as a program manager is the ability to provide the services that you've applied for. What we look at is that the notification of the ability to use those funds in a timely manner. If you're not able to use those funds by the time the grant ends, the notification to me as a program manager, so we have an opportunity to reallocate some of those funds. No, that wouldn't be a mark against an agency if they're not able to use the funds. There would have to be other reasons that would be a negative mark against an agency.
Okay, thank you. And we have a great question here from Sheila Barnett, who is the director of Goodland Housing Authority. She works closely with their local Genesis or Salvation Army agency. Is this an application that they could apply for with Genesis to use to help with rental assistance?
Yes. It could be. How that would be used would be dependent upon what type of services or what type of rental assistance. Is the rent subsidized at the housing authority? If so, what are some of the other needs of the participants or the renters, what their needs are? But yet you could definitely partner to use this program to assist individuals that have that need.
Great, thank you, James. And here's a question from Megan Wheeler. Is there a relief program for homeowners who are facing foreclosure? I can chime in and just say that our Kansas Eviction Prevention Program is designated for tenants and landlords. So unfortunately, it does not provide assistance to homeowners. But James, is there any kind of flexibility within the ESG program to assist homeowners?
For homeowners, we couldn't help pay mortgages, but individuals that are at risk of losing their mortgage and needed to be rehoused, you could do that, but you couldn't pay mortgage payments with this. So no, not at this time.
Okay. Here's a question from Claudette Humphrey. She says, my agency is currently funded for rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention in Salina. However, we cover a 31 county region. Is it possible to apply for funds that would allow us to help in whatever county we receive a referral or application from, rather than having to specifically identify a specific county for the funds? Also, can we apply to broaden our current program to include folks outside our current program demographic?
Claudette, yes. That's a good question, and yes, that's exactly why we had this webinar, is to be able to explain that yes, you can apply to cover those counties. You can meet with me and we could go over how to do that. Yes, you can do that.
All right, and another good follow-up question from Jean. What if we wanted to build tiny houses for emergency shelter? Could these funds be used for that project?
No, we cannot do that with the ESG funds.
Okay. And a follow-up comment from Sheila Barnett. They have public housing only, so this would be for others in the community.
Yes. And so even with public housing, for some of those individuals that have subsidized housing and maybe they're at risk of being evicted from subsidized housing, they could still be eligible for arrears. Arrears is a different category than ongoing rental assistance. If they have arrears, that's a different category of rent than ongoing rent, and arrears are not subsidized when they become arrears. So there is a way to be able to help individuals with arrears, but not ongoing rent. And that, a lot of that time, it applies to individuals that are homeless and needing to reestablish in housing authorities. A lot of times they have to pay up their back payments before they can get a new house in a housing authority. So though ESG can cover some of those arrear payments. Hopefully that helps.
James, while we were talking about the application, I was just going to go ahead and walk folks through where to find it on our webpage. If you go to kshousingcorp.org, our homepage here, you can click on, there's a couple different places where you can access this application, but if you go to the current announcements button, probably the easiest place here at the top of the page, here you'll have the notice of all of the current funding that we have available for our various programs. And right here at the top is our Emergency Solutions Grant announcement. You can click through on any of these links to go to our program pages to learn more about the funding. And then this button here will take you straight to that application that we just walked through a moment ago. So just go to kshousingcorp.org and then look at the current announcements button. And all of this information is available there.
One of the things I wanted to touch on too, Emily, while we have a December 15th deadline for applications, we want everybody to try to meet that deadline. But if you're working directly with me to develop a program or proposal for an application, we will be able to extend that deadline if you're working with me to establish how to develop a program for areas that need coverage. So with the flexibilities of the ESG CV funding, we have the ability to work directly with individuals to develop programs that are not already in use. So we would be able to maybe extend that deadline, but we would like, if you have an existing program and you're applying for funds, to submit your application by December the 15th. Hopefully that did not mess up anybody. So if you're not actively working with me to develop a program, you have to have your application in by the 15th. But like for Claudette, if we're working to broaden the capacity and coverage and get approval from all those counties, or how to be approved to cover all those counties, we can extend your ability to apply after the 15th. Or if we're working with housing authorities to develop a program, how to cover arrears or those type of things, we can extend the application. But I would suggest that you get with me now so we can start working on that to meet the deadline, so we don't have to go past that deadline. I think we got about 10 more minutes. So is there anything that I need to cover that somebody would like to hear about, additional information about some of the activities? Well, Emily?
Well, I think it looks like we've addressed all these questions, and I will just share that we can make this presentation available on our website. We can also share the recording of the webinar and both the PowerPoint. So we can make those available if you missed a portion or if you have colleagues who weren't able to join us today. Someone else asked, Casey Johnson, thank you for chiming in. A bit off topic, but do you happen to know the deadline for KEP applications? And it's really all related these days. And this is an easy one. It's the same application deadline. So our Kansas Eviction Prevention Program, we are also requesting that folks get their applications in by December 15th. The reason for that is that all this funding, of course, is supplied by the Federal CARES Act, and all of it has to be expended by December 30th per federal regulations. So that will give us enough processing time to get those applications reviewed and processed and get the funds to the Kansas communities and individuals who really need them. So December 15th is an important date to keep in mind when it comes to our programs right now.
Emily and James, I may just chime in to, first of all, thank you both for your excellent questions and information and fielding all these great questions from our audience. Thanks to Christine and everyone else who have helped at KHRC make this an event that happened. But particularly, thank you to everyone who's participated in this. We've had some excellent questions. It's clear that you're an engaged audience and you're actively working to address housing needs in your communities. We want this to be a dialogue, so please make sure you reach out to James, Maria, and everyone else from our office. If you think of additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you for the work that you do in your neck of the woods, and wishing you all a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.